Cyberpunk 2077 is a game with a lot of different endings, and no matter which we wind up with, none seem definitively happy. At best, V gains everything they ever wanted, but a very limited lifespan. At worst, their soul gets imprisoned for eternity by an evil emperor. But what if I told you that actually, in each of these endings, is a very real possibility that V not only survives properly, but survives with the prospect of regaining their full strength at some point in the future, leaving the door open for their prominent return in future projects like Cyberpunk Orion, perhaps even as the main protagonist. So get comfy as we explore the narrative breadcrumbs suggesting just how V can survive in every ending of Cyberpunk 2077. Let's kick this off with the generally accepted worst ending to the game. The Devil involves V taking Hanako's deal, blocking out Johnny, traveling to Arasaka Tower to depose the patricidal Yorinobu and restore his father, Emperor Saburo, to the Arasaka throne by taking over his own son's body. I've explained in other videos why this in itself is a terrible series of events, and why Yorinobu is actually a really good guy. So I'll spare the specifics this time around, but I have covered that elsewhere. After that, we're carted off to Arasaka's space station to have the biochip forcibly removed via neurosurgery, before being subjected to a series of dehumanizing tests as we recover. After an uncounted period of time though, it transpires that full recovery isn't possible. The biochip's overwrites have irreparably damaged V's brain and will still be dead before the year is out. So for this ending, we're faced with a final choice: not signing this contract and returning to Earth to live out the brief time we have left however we see fit, or to sign it and forfeit our soul to Arasaka, becoming just like so many billionaires, celebrities, and netrunners who were caught snooping, an engram inside Mikoshi. Our body would die or possibly be put on ice, whilst our personality, memories, perhaps even our very consciousness is cloned into software, persisting to live, but under the control of our greatest enemy. So let's look first at if V returns to Earth, showing a middle finger to the operating room and heading into a shuttle hangar, taking a long stare down at the Atlantic and tearing off our bullet pendant. I think that signifies letting go of the past, as it comes up in all the endings and is only kept in one. So similar to many other endings in this case, we head back to Earth with 6 months to live, or 6 months to find a different cure, which may very well be out there. And there's nothing to say V couldn't now pursue the prospects presented by Mr. Blue Eyes, or indeed the Aldecaldos, both of which we'll cover later in the video. Unique to returning to Earth in this ending though, is the call we receive from Hanako, chasing us up on our offer, which we declined.
Hello, V. From what I understand, you have less than 6 months to live. I do not know how you plan to spend this time. Perhaps you have chosen to put your feet up, rest, ponder life's meaning. Or perhaps you continue to do what you are good at. If that is the case, my father and I would gladly retain your services. You would be compensated generously. 6 months will pass faster than you imagine. It would be a shame to let this time go to waste.
So clearly the Arasaka Corps still highly value V's skills as a merc. After all, it was only through our actions that these two even continue to rule the corporation, and evidently they see many more uses for us. Initially sending a lapdog they think we have a better relationship with, Hellman, or if he's alive, Takemura, but in the event that fails, Hanako does come clean, in a sense, attempting to retain our services for herself. Note this interesting line from Takemura though, when asking about Hanako earlier.
Who asked you? Who wanted you to talk to me? Hanako?
She has forgotten you already.
Well, evidently not, mate, given that she calls us later. And I think this downplay of our importance initially is buttering us up to choose the Mikoshi option without suspecting Arasaka's true intentions for us. Note that Hanako is also offering generous compensation now, and to someone who is dying, I don't know about you, but the only compensation I'd want is a means by which to continue to live. V doesn't have any dependents, no family to leave a wealthy fortune to, so I can only imagine that some form of life would have to be Hanako's offer, potentially goading us back into the Mikoshi option, or even miraculously coming out with a transferable body. Note though that Takemura explains we have a unique phenotype thanks to the biochip, and any normal body would probably reject our engram in much the same way ours already is. Even a straight up clone of V now would still be incompatible. But come on, this is Arasaka. Much as they don't want to scream about it, we are a valuable asset, and I'm fairly certain they'd get swiftly to work to secure or grow us a functioning body, even if that means infiltrating a more biologically oriented megacorp like Biotechnica and stealing their research, taking payment for the body gifted to us in further services. A fifth corporate war still inevitably looms, and our track record would make us an invaluable operative. That's not to say V takes this offer, of course. They seem pretty resolute on the way out, and remember, there's other survival options on the table from this point, which we'll get to. Still, if CDPR wanted to tie every ending in as potentially canon and save portable for the next game, this one isn't off the table for V's survival. Plus, it informs on the Corp's intentions for the more simple alternative of this ending that V just signs the contract, becoming an Engram and having their consciousness survive. In the terms and conditions here, we learn three things. 1. V maintains the right to terminate their Engram at any time, i.e. they won't be forced to keep existing in digispace. 2. The Engram won't be copied, we shouldn't have multiple constructs of V about the place. And 3. Other people can't force the Engram to do their bidding for their own gain. But whilst V shouldn't therefore be forced into digital slavery, there's always workarounds to these things. Like say, if Hanako came out with that miracle replacement body, rented on the condition that we continue to serve the corporation. Kind of like corp-financed implants, but they just own literally everything you are. In this instance, V could even remain the protagonist of Cyberpunk Orion, with a potential prologue to that game involving them being awoken in a new body, good excuse for a new character creation screen, and then sent off with an initial quest to complete some dangerous operation or investigation for Arasaka. Literally the plot of Altered Carbon, I know. Of course, this is all contingent on the notion that V can in fact get a new body, and it may also just be the case that Arasaka simply want to store them in Mikoshi as a speculative investment of sorts. We can't definitively claim V's new body will be a priority for them, or even a genuine possibility. Equally, it might be the case that Takamura is simply lying to make V sign the contract, and actually getting them a new body with relic tech is far simpler than made out to be. Or perhaps V's Mikoshi stored Engram wouldn't even need a new body at all. We see during the Talent Academy gig of Phantom Liberty the use of robot avatars to save on talent scouts having to travel, allowing people from across the globe to attend quote-unquote in person. Perhaps V could remain an Engram and simply be downloaded to one of these. That would at least make for a cool death and respawn system, but maybe a little too low stakes for CDPR to write a compelling story. So finally for this ending, let's look at the cards Misty draws in both variations of this for potentially more of an indication as to the path that V might wind up down.
Oh dear. The Fool, the Moon, the High Priestess. Those are bad cards. Keep a close eye on your new friends, V. I mean it.
The Fool, I think, is V still near the start of their journey, having not matured as much by choosing this path, whilst the Moon is more mystery, I guess, and things not being fully as they seem, navigating a world of smoke and mirrors, whilst the High Priestess compounds that sense of mystery further, and very much points to Hanako in-game. At least that's how I'm interpreting this. I've done a whole video on tarot cards, and let me assure you, beyond the surface level, any links made with these things are tenuous at best. Still, I think narratively, they can be somewhat taken to imply what's next in store for V in each ending. And in this case, it suggests a future, still working as a street cred hungry merc, heavily involved with Hanako Arasaka for purposes that remain somewhat obscure. However this plays out though, I think it's fairly safe to assume a high likelihood that V does stick around and has some kind of role still to play after the Devil ending. But what about the others? Added in Phantom Liberty, this next one involves us enlisting the help of the FIA to have the biochip surgically removed. Out of all the endings, the tower is the only one where original V does survive, without getting soul killed and put into Mikoshi, unless I suppose you return to Earth at the end of the Devil 2. But whilst V already fully survives the tower in every sense of the word, it does seem to take them off the table as an all-powerful, limitless potential merc for future installments. Induced into a coma for 2 years by the surgery, V wakes up in 2079, no longer able to support pretty much any cyberware.
Your neurons can no longer handle most implants. Chrome. Your brain can manage your personal link and simple code processors. But any use of a combat implant, well, it could kill you.
Damaged my nervous system. Can hardly believe it. Why didn't they use nanobots?
Neural matrix. Apparently, it reduced your cell's regenerative capacity. We tried everything. Really?
What about my chrome?
Your implants have been deactivated. It needed doing. Your survival depended on it.
So, looks like the AI systems of the neural matrix have also reduced us back to a normie human, and heading to Vic's later, we can see in the scan that only 23% of our systems are now compatible, probably the basic ones that Reed mentioned. Vic also has this to say regarding our newfound issue.
First time I've seen anything like this. Your cortex seems to have turned deaf to implant signals. Maybe reinstall the neuroport firmware. No, that'd... Maybe switch to binary signaling. That's a risk of shock. Life-threatening kind.
Said you could do something, Vic.
I was wrong. I'm sorry.
Now, I know the NUSA said they deactivated our implants due to the neural damage and poor cell regeneration, but the solutions Vic is pondering? I mean, I'm no Ripperdoc, but it sounds to me an awful lot like a turn it off and on again scenario, with issues being electrical rather than biological, impeded by the NUSA deactivating our implants rather than the biological damage sustained by the Matrix. But like I say, I'm no Ripperdoc. Now, Laidback Gamers has a video diving deeper into a theory on this, which I'd highly recommend, basically theorizing that V has been unwittingly made into a Winter Soldier-esque sleeper agent to be activated whenever the NUSA have need. They delve further into intricacies and wider sources to back this up, so check that out if you want more info. But the implication is that Reed isn't being entirely truthful as to the incurable nature of V's disability, and in fact, the handicap was imposed deliberately by the FIA. The issues with the neural matrix, if this theory is true, was a lie made up to control V. But why? Well, for the same reason we spend a huge chunk of the expansion trying to bring in Somi. Rosalind Myers now sees us as an asset, and after the insane feats of power we demonstrate in either of those two ending paths, why the hell wouldn't she? With a fifth corporate war brewing and Militech basically being the representative megacorp of the NUSA, agents like us will be invaluable for what's to come. This in fact completely mirrors the theory I posed for the Devil ending, pitting us this time on the other side of that conflict. By removing V's special abilities, they not only remove the threat of us becoming an Arasaka agent, but they maintain full control over how and if we may be deployed. If it's true that the FIA actually have the power to switch our cyberware back to working, undeafen our cortex from implant signals, then Orion could begin with washed up face-in-the-crowd V receiving a call from an FIA operative, saying they've found a way to get us back to full strength, but that we're gonna have to do something for them first, placing us into a conflict that in another timeline, the Devil timeline, we would have also wound up in, just on the other side. It could be a great first mission of sorts, funneling these endings into a prologue that brings it all back to kickstart Orion. Equally, we could ponder whether the 2 years V was in a coma were in actual fact that, or whether they've already been conducting FIA operations and maybe got out by striking a deal to have their mind wiped and their chrome disabled. The prospect that V spent 2 years in the field without realizing it is a pretty cool one to entertain, although there's even less evidence actually backing that up, and this is all getting a little bit speculative. And after all, it may very well still be the case that the neural matrix did do irreparable damage, that V can never return to their full power. In fact, it would line up with why V's body destroys itself in other endings, but not this one, because here it's simply too weak. Let's just compare two clips for a second, one from Reed in the tower ending, and one from Alt inside Makoshi during the Sun or Star.
Neural matrix. Apparently, it reduced your cell's regenerative capacity.
DNA reconfiguration by the relic has progressed too far. Added to aggressive, invasive medications, the body's immune system attacking its own neurons.
Christ, will you just skip to the end?
So perhaps the AI of the neural matrix simply foresaw this fatal outcome, and as a result had to limit V's cellular regeneration to stop their body from killing itself. Maybe for V to survive, this weakening needs to occur. So in that case, this body is off the table for a sequel protagonist. But once again, clones or robot avatars could still come in clutch, providing providing the fresh slate we'd need for V to return to full-powered protagonist in a sequel. It would also be a good excuse for leveling up from 1 again. Hell, if Mr. Blue Eyes is in a position to offer aid to a mortally deteriorating V, he might have even less trouble solving the issues of just a heavily weakened one. But we'll get to that later. For now, whilst the tower ending poetically saves our protagonist at the cost of everything they hold dear, it hasn't closed the door entirely on a return to the power that was. Now, here's an interesting one, because whilst Temperance ends with V surrendering their body to Johnny, accepting the raw mathematics that his life could potentially be 100, even 200 times longer than what V has left, we don't definitively die either. Let's see what Alt has to say about what'll actually happen to us.
Jesus. To be a shapeless shadow in a digital afterlife. Really think I'd rather die.
It is freedom from the body's limitations, from the base worries of life in the world. It is a new perspective on all.
Didn't think life was worth clinging to. Not at any price.
'Cause it ain't.
Wrong. That light beyond the black wall, see? That's hope. Could be the flames of hell or heaven's grace. Might also be an Engram reading code. But it's a promise of survival.
So there's a few things to take from that. Whatever V's bodily disentangled Engram's life beyond the black wall would look like, it would be a life, though one very different to anything we know, deprived of human senses and merely existing as a digital consciousness. I mean, technically, by entering Mikoshi, they did die, but if at that exact moment a perfect replica with all the same memories up to that point popped into existence as the original ended, you might as well just call it survival, I guess. Original V can't feel being dead. After all, it's a bit of a mindfuck, I know. Anyway, it also sounds and looks as though passing through that yellow slither beyond the black wall shreds the carefully organized Engram into something that can't so easily be added to a biochip and downloaded back to a body. I know that Johnny shrugs off sticking around as a construct for longer, but I almost wish we could have given him the body, added V to a chip, then gone and found them a clone or something. As it is, whilst V's survival in the Temperance ending seems to be, well, survival, I guess it would most likely mean turning into an entity similar to Alt's. Formerly human, but now something completely different. More using V's engrammatic data to inform the design of an artificial intelligence. That is, of course, if V survives in the digital wasteland and doesn't get eaten, for lack of a better word, by some other entity. Does this provide any prospects to be re-downloaded into a human body to play a protagonist still for a sequel? Well, to answer that, I think we need to look at the leaps and bounds made by Project Cynosure in capturing and mantling rogue AIs into becoming synergized with weaponry. Through the somewhat damaged path of Phantom Liberty, we can get our hands on the Kanto Cyberdeck or Erebus SMG, both using the reluctant help of an AI to more effectively neutralize our enemies. And I know downloading to a gun and to a body are probably a little different in terms of the level of difficulty, but hey, it proves that strides have already been made in the right direction. Whilst Arasaka focused on capturing human souls, Militech built themselves a device by which to capture demons. So yes, it would have been much more straightforward to just put V on a chip while still inside Mikoshi, but if the writers really willed it, I reckon it'd be possible to make this a canon ending and still have enough established context to download Blackwall AI V back into a body. For the credits of this ending, Misty draws these cards.
Oh dear. The Hanged Man, the Magician, the Star. Those are not good cards, V. They're really bad. There's something like death, but not quite.
So the Hanged Man represents sacrifice in order to achieve rebirth. Pretty obvious in this scenario, I think. The Magician represents willpower, an ability to adapt and maintain control of one's destiny. Sounds like Johnny getting his life back, or perhaps V maintaining their freedom in a sense. Whilst the Star is literally described as the card of hope, mirroring what V says about this yellow light. I don't know, doesn't sound too bad overall to me, but then Misty is our expert on all these highly subjective things. But hey, even if V is now technically dead and only exists as an AI ghost beyond the Blackwall, they have still technically survived here purely by continuing to exist. Speaking of the star being the card of hope, it's only fitting that the star ending should be the most hopeful through and through, though more hope doesn't necessarily mean the greatest prospect of survival after this. After all, how could a group of ragtag nomads possibly succeed where not one but two great superpowers both failed? Probably, to some degree. That said, a lot of breadcrumbs do get left here, setting up the notion that V isn't gonna simply go gentle into that good night over the next 6 months. Let's see what Panam has to say.
Gonna figure this out, Panam. Vic's drug helps a bit now. And once we get to where we're going, we'll try all your contacts.
They've pulled some of our folks out of deep, deep cesspits. They'll help. You'll see.
So it's a little cagey on the exact details of where they're going or what Vic has prescribed V, but presumably it's something to slow V's own body from destroying itself, right? Possibly stretching out 6 months for longer. Though admittedly we don't know that, and it could merely be something to lessen the pain and visible deterioration. No matter, it's clear that the Aldecaldos are crossing the border to find someone. Old contacts that may be able to help V somehow. Again, CDPR seem to be pretty cagey with this ending in particular, though I suppose that plays into the whole theme of hope, knowing that there's something else out there to be tried, even if we don't know what it is yet. A prevailing theory is that due to the Nomad's pre-established contact with Biotechnica, they're out to go and source V a clone body to be used, one that won't slowly murder them to death. And to be fair, it's a perfectly plausible theory, not to mention another great excuse for a new character creation menu. And even if Biotechnica aren't involved at all, even if it just is a ragtag group of various Aldecaldos, I wouldn't entirely underestimate the tech or expertise that these guys can cough up. I mean, during the course of this game, we stole a top-tier military hover tank, stormed a construction site guarded by a private army, tunneled all the way under a city, and broke into the most heavily guarded building in that city, successfully making off with a ton of their stuff. These guys really are built different. I mean, look at Mitch. Guy pulled a Pacific Rim, piloting a 2-person tank solo, which should have fried his synapses beyond repair, and yet walked away perfectly fine a few weeks later. The wilds and the wars forged these guys into very stern stuff indeed, and even if they don't have something right now to save V, you can betcha they'll stop at nothing until they do. Whether that be stealing a special prototype body from Biotechnica, a la the Vision heist from Age of Ultron, or sourcing something with similar abilities to the neural matrix. Whatever it is, the devs clearly didn't want to elaborate too much. Whether that's to leave the door open for a sequel, or just again, merely to allude to the prospect that there's hope. And maybe even this could again converge with a 5th corporate war storyline. Orion could open with V having survived Vic's drug to 2079, finding themselves in the same crossfire between Arasaka and Militech, attempting to secure something they're both fighting over in one final-ditch effort to save themselves. And perhaps Misty's cards could hold some more clues as to what could happen after the star.
You know what I drew? The chariot, the lovers, and the sun. Looks like you've got a good life ahead of you out in the Badlands.
So the chariot, I think, represents V still charging ahead despite the turbulence of life. The lovers seems obvious. Even if we didn't romance Panam or Judy, this is still a loving family we're now part of. But actually, the lovers reads as a card of dichotomies, reigning in juxtaposed turbulence, kind of similar sounding to the chariot, actually, whilst the sun is all about success, freedom, greatness, and splendor. Misty seems pretty happy, and I think if this did hold any meaning, it would imply a struggle still to come, but at the end of it, success. And if the devs chose to go the path this video is theorizing, then V surviving this ending has already practically written itself. Alright, fine, you got me. There's one ending choice where V definitely can't survive. After all, there's absolutely no way of coming back from a bullet to the head. Oh, wait a minute. Yes, there is, because V already survived Dexter Deshawn's gunshot from Plan B thanks to the relic bringing them back. Now, Victor explained the instant death didn't occur thanks to that gun being low caliber. So let's compare Plan B's stats to that of a standard Unity used in this ending. And yes, Plan B is about a third weaker, but does have a higher headshot multiplier of 200%. It's still, what, 15% higher overall damage from Unity if we're taking game stats as canon, but either way, it's not entirely out of the question that given V's track record, they could survive this. The crux here is more the end credit messages. Dedicated voicemails from those we held close, mourning our death with sincere and genuine sadness. Surely Misty and Vic at least would have seen V's body, and if that was somehow confiscated in the same way Jackie's was, well, you'd think there might be a note of that in their messages. Though I get that narratively the entire focus should be on the emotional gut punch of seeing the reactions of those left behind. There was no intention here of V coming back from this. That's not the point of this ending. So no, I don't really think there's a way V could survive this, and I reckon if CDPR did tie the other 5 endings back together as all canonically viable, I'd imagine this one would be left out of that. But if not, then I suppose there's a small chance the same Mikoshi Engram prospect could still be on the table, but realistically, nah. The Sun is the ending, which I think if CDPR were to just straight up select one as definitively canon, which would be a shame but infinitely easier to implement, then this would be the canon one, I would guess. Not only because there's 2 paths by which to get to it, the Sun and Don't Fear the Reaper, but because also it features Mr. Blue Eyes, Cyberpunk's own elusive man who's played a pivotal background role both in the main game and expansion, subtly rewiring the minds of prominent politicians, getting cyborg superweapons tickets to the moon, and now, in this ending, has approached us directly with the offer of a lifetime, perhaps even a lifeline. After all, why, after everything, would V once again take such an extraordinary risk? Now, Mr. B has a lot of hidden subtext in the game surrounding himself and Nightcorp, so much so that the Grand Unified Mr. Blue Eyes Conspiracy is probably the title for a future, much more detailed video. Subscribe if you don't want to miss it. I'll be dropping it sometime after I hit 100k. For now, let's specifically focus on the details from this encounter to get a sense of V's chances to pull off this heist and whether Blue Eyes can deliver if they do.
V, I've long awaited this moment to look the latest afterlife legend in the eye. I must say, I'm moved. Well, V, Mikoshi was quite the punch. You TKO'd Arasaka, in fact. Brought you eddies, influence around town. But not just that. It meant positive paralysis of Arasaka's systems. A few additional hatches opened up, my people rushed in, grabbed what they could.
So in this ending, Nightcorp are probably who he means when he talks about jumping in to fill the proverbial space left by Arasaka's decline, like a big game of Agario played on the world stage. Also, the fact he says latest afterlife legend suggests Mr. B is either really clued in on his afterlife lore, I mean, who isn't, or has been around for a while. There's also potentially even more to that statement, but pretty off topic for this video.
The casino is currently testing a new security system. And it's true. They will be shutting it down briefly today. I believe you'll know how to use that moment.
I know we'll probably never actually get to play this mission, and to be fair, it's probably way more badass in our minds anyway, but if they do run with this as the one and only canon ending, then that would be one hell of an intense way to kick off the next game.
Speaking of which, nobody's ever pulled off a stunt like this. Where I'm from, they'd say it's straight impossible. They'd say you're taking too big a risk. Poetically speaking, flying towards the sun to burn up.
Guess that's why you hired me.
You know why I hired you? Because you'd do anything at all for even the faintest chance at survival.
So that pretty much all but confirms that if V successfully does this, which, come on, they probably will, unless they don't, but if they do, this will ensure V's survival. We don't know what it is that Blue Eyes can provide for this, but presumably V has some form of proof. After all, their apartment's littered with shards on every space mission orbiting the sun, and they've put more thought into this than most of the other gigs at least. Also note that little where I'm from there. I mean, the context of labeling this gig impossible where he's from sounds a hell of a lot like that extends beyond the borders of the human world. And whilst Mr. B's body may be organic, the blue eyes are the same as when a data or financial transaction is taking place. Someone or something is controlling this man, or at the very least, feeding him a constant stream of data. And where they're from, this gig would be impossible, statistically. Yet, the fact that we're trying anyway suggests that this self-destroy mission can still succeed in a potential future reality, regardless of what all the algorithms say.
This time tomorrow, should have the casino's client data. All of it. Don't forget your side of the bargain.
So I think that's pretty clear. A bargain has been struck. Nightcorp wants the client data from the residents of the Crystal Palace, humanity's most notorious holiday destination for the wealthiest, most famous people in existence, and in a world ruled by the corpo elite, Nightcorp wants access to all of them. And if their treatment of Jefferson Perales is anything to go by, then Sinister doesn't begin to describe their intent. But never mind that for a moment. Can Nightcorp save V? And if so, why does this ending remain as up in the air as the rest? To answer the first part, we have to consider what Mr. B could have that neither Arasaka nor the FIA did. And to be fair, Nightcorp's influence runs deep into the fathoms of the world through spaces unseen to most. Through several side quests, we hear mere whispers of them using AI to subtly rewrite the minds of employees and officials, neurologically reprogramming them with nobody realizing. The man before us may just be a proxy, but is the entity talking through him actually an AI? Perhaps, yet at the same time, some of his sentences are a little colloquial for a machine.
Now I got nothing to lose.
That's kind of grim. Then again, who am I to judge?
Either way, my best guess, best hope, I suppose, is that Nightcorp plan to repurpose their research into neurology to perhaps reprogram V's brain to once again peacefully unite with their mind. I've already discussed the notion of other corporations, Arasaka and Militech, levying V's services with the carrot on a stick of further survival in other futures. Nightcorp are simply ahead of the curve. And if the mind reprogramming thing doesn't work, who's to say this shady corp don't just have some spare bodies lying around? After all, what's this guy for? So, readying their weapon and floating towards the biggest moment of their life, things are left open-ended. But if Misty's final message bears any meaning, this time things do turn out well.
Know what I drew? Strength, the Emperor, and the world. Babe, the world's gonna hear about you. Go and show Night City what you're made of.
Sounds pretty promising. Strength, it seems, resembles pure resilience, the power to keep going and overcome the impossible. Sounds like our current situation, or perhaps the path we just went through. The Emperor, then, would be control and domination, obtained by climbing over a mountain of bodies, fitting with V now ruling the afterlife, whilst the world represents the end of a journey, with the choice to be content with what we gained, or to gamble it all, taking on something new, which is the case with V. Not an utterly definitive sign of victory, although it could be spun that way. Ultimately, it's obvious. If CDPR want V to return as the sequel's protagonist, all they have to do here is successfully pull off this mission. After that, the path to victory ahead is pretty much written. If not, then maybe we'll hear legends of a merc who lost it all, attempting to pull off the most daring heist ever, having survived their previous two. How could this funnel in with other potential endings discussed in this video? Well, I'd imagine if a fifth Corp war were to break, Nightcorp would no doubt play some sort of role. No doubt Mr. B wouldn't let us walk away with total freedom and may rope us back in somewhere the same way Arasaka, Militech, the Blackwall AIs, or even the Nomads might. I don't know, it just feels like all the endings revolve around someone or something who'll have a big role to play in Orion. And personally, I think it would be awesome to somehow tie in various choices from this game as consequential to the next one. It certainly feels like if CDPR wanted to, they could very easily write V back in as the central protagonist for a second game, though perhaps it would undermine the gut punch endings of this one, and perhaps, unlike Geralt of Rivia, they choose to switch up the player character for subsequent games. But in the end, we'll just have to wait and see. So comment below, do you think it's possible that V could or couldn't return in every ending, and what would your thoughts be on having the same player character for Cyberpunk Orion? Thank you, as always, to the patrons for keeping the channel alive, and thank you for watching. I'm Sam Bram, and I'll see you in the next one.